Okay. Well, that's okay. I'm happy that you're back, and I think that we're ready to start now. So, thank you for being here. Technology, as we know, it can be great, but it can also be a pain in the butt sometimes. So we'll work with it.
Right,
We'll
right.
work with it.
Yep.
So go ahead and tell us about yourself, John. You are not a computer science engineer. I can say that. That's not what you do.
Yes. All right. So tell us about yourself. I think I'm going to keep the answer limited to what I'm up to now so that you don't end up with my entire autobiography. But currently, I'm a practicing attorney. I work with the firm Aiken Strauss-Hauer and Feld, one of the founders of Trey Athletes. I practice in the real estate space. I live in Dallas. I've lived here since I guess 2004, whenever I started law school. And I'm married. We just celebrated our 11-year anniversary, and we have two young sons. One 6, that's Leighton, and one 2, that's Everett, who you met earlier.
Nice. Very nice. So you've been in Dallas, you said, since 2004. Where are you originally from?
So as a kid, we actually bounced around quite a bit, but all in Texas. Started out in Southeast Texas, down near Livingston, which I'm sure no one's ever heard of. And then by the time I was in high school, we had settled in Mansfield, Texas, where I finished out high school before going on to college.
Okay. And so growing up, did you always say, when I grew up, I want to be a lawyer? Was that your aspiration as a child?
So that's funny. I come from one of those, like I'm the first kid in my family to go to college. So when you're from a family like that, I think there's like, if you're one of the kids who's shown some aptitude or some drive and gotten some good grades or whatever, you've got two options, and it's doctor or lawyer. And whenever I went into school at TCU, I wanted to keep both options open, so that's exactly what I did.
Okay. So you were going to pick between those, so you ended up being a lawyer. So where did you go to college? You mentioned TCU.
Yep, that's right. So I went to undergrad at TCU, and I made my way all the way over to the next town over for law school. I went to law school at SMU.
Okay. So for people who are not from Texas, like me, TCU is Texas Central University, I'm guessing.
Oh, so it stands for Texas Christian University.
Ah, okay. Texas Christian University, and SMU is Southern Methodist University.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, I guess right. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm not from Texas. I'm actually based in Atlanta. But doing work with Trey, like I've gotten to know some of the universities in the different areas in the Dallas area. And Southern Methodist is one of those places. So what was your major then when you were at TCU?
All right. So when I was in high school, at the very end, whenever I basically decided I was going to go to college at all, I had a counselor tell me, well, if you don't know what you want to study, which I didn't, and you think you're going to end up in a profession, just do political science and figure it out from there. Try to take some hard science, like some classes that are in the hard sciences, while you're also, taking on a political science degree. That way you can kind of keep your options open. That was really the only advice I sought out in high school, and that's what I took.
Okay. So the only advice, well, that was some pretty good advice though, because it allows you to keep your options open as far as what you were going to do later. And I know that at a point you were an athlete as well. You ran track, correct?
Yeah.
Sorry, you're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, so I missed. You got me?
Now I do.
All right. Yeah. Sorry, you were breaking up there for a second too. I think there's something going on with Zoom, but anyway. All right. So the question was about track, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was running track in high school. I ran the 400 and the 800. I was putting up times that were good enough to get me, you know, in a conversation with somebody if I asked. So once I decided I was going to go to TCU, I had my high school coach reach out to the middle distance coach at TCU to see if there was any room for me to come and join them for, you know, as good of a spot as I could get. And so the guy, Coach Kuntz was his name. He said, "You're more than welcome. You know, we'll see you." I guess it was we'll see you a few weeks before the semester starts. And so that was the story of deciding I wanted to run track in college as well.
Okay. So that wasn't like a long-term goal that you had. It just kind of like, I run track now, I can continue to do it in college, and that's kind of how it went for you that way.
Yeah. No, I never set out to have some big career or anything like that. It was just the thing that I loved most about my life at that point was running. It was very stable. It was very organized. It was very controllable. And I was entering a period that felt very unstable and very out of control. And I was very much interested in being able to continue to run, being able to continue having a coach and someone I could just have tell me what to do and I go do it. That was the beauty of running. It was like, here's what you eat, here's the workouts you're gonna do, and that's your job. And the outcome is the outcome. You'll either run faster or you won't.
That's nice. So you really enjoyed that, having like that set schedule and having all that stuff set up for you. I know sometimes that can be a challenge for some people who kind of want that freedom, but you didn't want it. You wanted that that reliability of your schedule and having someone really to keep you in line. Nice. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. I still need it to this day. I have a lot of people that help perform, you know, that coach like function, mentors at work. My wife keeps me, you know, on the straight and narrow and doing the things I need to do. I've got, of all things, a bike racing coach that I work with, and a lifting coach that I work with. I find that life is easier if somebody else is telling you what to do.
And so that's a really interesting point, and I'm sure this is going to like lead us into a conversation. We're talking about how this also translates like your everyday work and the work that you do as a lawyer. But I'm curious, like, were your parents they have you like on a really strict schedule of like how you were supposed to do things and what time and all that stuff growing up?
Yeah, so it was actually kind of the opposite. There was a lot of instability in my childhood growing up. I bounced around between my grandparents' house or my grandmother's house and my parents' house, and we were moving a lot. And so there was actually a lot of, I guess it was a lack of structure. And I think once I got into running, once I met my first middle school coach and she told me, do this and you'll run faster next year. And I just did what she told me to do every day. And I ran faster the next year. It was like, all right, we're not bouncing, you know, this is totally different than the feeling of constantly being uprooted, moving around and all that. This is very stable. I just do these things and I get a particular outcome and it's very predictable. And so it was a real stabilizing force in my life at the
Okay, nice. So let's talk about when you decided that you did want to pursue law, because you at some point you went to college, you weren't sure what you wanted to do, so you did political science. At what point did you decide that, okay, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and pursue law, I'm going to go take the LSAT, I'm going to go to law school? What was the defining moment for you?
time. Oh man, so I guess there probably wasn't a seminal moment. I mean, I knew that I didn't I knew that I wanted to be a professional of some sort, right? And the law just made the most sense with my skill set, right? So I could write a little bit, I could read a little. Given that they were like my only two skill sets, I thought, like, doctor is out, accountant's out, I'm terrible at math, lawyer is my only option.
Okay. And so walk us through your career path then, because I know like you went to law school, you graduated, and then what happened? So walk us through like how you got to like where you are today.
Okay, so this is there's a lesson here that is a lesson that I think I would love to share with your athletes. And
We'd love to hear lessons.
I've learned this lesson a number of times. I learned this lesson at the very sudden end of my track career with a broken leg. I learned this lesson early on in my career, and I learned it recently in a bike accident. But the lesson is this: if the worst thing that you fear might happen actually happens, you're going to be okay. You're going to make it to the other side. Things are going to be fine. And in this case, so I graduated law school in 2007, which at that very moment seemed to be an amazing time to be graduating law school and getting into the business of real estate transactions. Little did I know that, just less than a year later, we would be in the middle of the biggest financial crisis that our economy has ever seen. And the most deeply impacted industry impacted by the financial crisis was real estate, the specialty that I had chosen just, like 8 months earlier. So I felt, we'll say the decision at the time felt like a disaster. The real estate industry melted down, as you know, as I guess everyone knows. I'm not sure the athletes that would be listening to this probably have much of a memory of that, but all transactional activity stopped, all capital flowing into the real estate markets stopped. There was an incredible loss of notional value. And so there was this period where people were just getting their arms around exactly what all has gone wrong here. But during that period, we're definitely not paying lawyers to do real estate transactions. So I was stuck. And so I ended up losing my first job. And you can imagine what a nightmare that was, being laid off in the middle of the financial crisis. And my only skill set was the same skill set that everyone else had who had just been laid off. So I was in no way marketable. I thought, well, my life is over. And my career is certainly over, and we'll see if I can, we'll see, what I end up doing after this. Well, as luck would have it, I ended up getting the job at Bain just a few weeks after getting the notice that I was going to be laid off, and it worked out. I mean, I just got very, very lucky, and I'm still to this day feel very lucky with the way that situation played out. So that's I'm not sure that tells you exactly like my career trajectory and all of that, but that's certainly, I think, the most important narrative and the defining moment of my career as it is today, because it gave me a lot of things. It gave me that lesson that, hey, look, the bad thing can happen, all right? And oftentimes the bad thing does happen, but you will be okay. And it also gave me the opportunity to really appreciate the job, because it can be lost, right? And so whenever I joined Bain, I just had a much different attitude towards the job. I appreciated it every day. I mean, there are things about this job, there always have been, always will be, that are unpleasant. But if you go into the job every day with the mindset that I appreciate having this job, I'm very fortunate to have this job, those little things that, and sometimes big things, but the unpleasant aspects of the job are a lot easier to tolerate whenever you've been given the gift of knowing that the job itself is something to appreciate at the macro level.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it is important to know, like, we all have that one thing that we're afraid is going to happen, and ultimately, if it does, like you said, the worst thing that you think is going to happen, if it happens, you'll be okay. You'll get through it. So kind of anticipating that and just, knowing it out there, and then, you being able to bounce back from that. It's always good to hear comeback stories. So tell us about what exactly you do. Like, what does a day in the life look like for you?
All right, so I don't know how granular you want to get, but what what it is I do I'm sorry?
I didn't say anything.
Hey, LaJoy, I think we're having a little more breakup here. Go ahead.
Oh, I didn't say anything.
Oh, all right, sorry. Okay, so what it is I do is I help mostly companies buy, sell, and operate real estate, oftentimes in unusual circumstances. And if I have a particular subspecialty, I help companies buy, sell, and operate hotels.
Okay. That sounds interesting. So you help companies buy and sell hotels. Are these like really big hotels or like small boutique hotels? Like what kinds of hotels? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, so that always depends on the client, right? So different clients have different strategies. Oftentimes, the hotel properties are effectively an investment asset for the client, and depending on what their operational strengths are, what their investment goals are, and the state of the industry at any given moment, that's going to dictate the type of hotel that they invest in. So some companies, let's say between 2009, whenever we had the big, started the fallout of the big collapse, right? Started to really materialize, and assets started to really lose value because, either there was no buyers, there were not a lot of people staying in the hotels at all. The hotels were owned by banks that had repossessed them, and there was not a lot of capital investment going into the hotels. So what a lot of companies did at that point, you call these private equity companies, they went in, they repositioned the hotels, meaning that they took over management, they often changed management, they changed how the hotel generates revenue, and then they usually refresh the hotel, right? Like, updated the rooms, updated the lobby, all of that. So those folks, their business is to get in, hold the assets for a certain period of time, have a certain amount of investment in the assets, and then get out, right? That's the model of a certain type of client. Completely different type of client. They actually want to buy very stable, consistently performing assets that sort of chug away, pretty consistently every year. They want to buy the asset on day one and know it's going to perform more or less the same next year that it's performing now, and that's their business model. So depending on what your business model is, that's going to dictate what kind of assets you invest in, or that you try to acquire and operate, and that's actually what dictates what kind of hotels I work on any given day. So some clients, they love big, complicated resort properties, right? And other clients, they literally want they want to cater to business travelers that are on a budget, right? So call it economy class hotels, right? So everything along that spectrum, I work with clients that deal in all of those products. So I see it all on any given year. I touch, a hotel that covers the entire spectrum of hotels that you could, dream up.
It's interesting because everything that you were just saying, it sounds very financy, I could say. It's like when we were talking
That's
about
right.
different kind of risk and the investments and those kind of things. It sounds like it's really related to finance. And I think that's interesting because you mentioned how you were horrible at math and you didn't want to go into accounting, but you're still doing, I feel like, some work that's still relevant. So I think it's, something to point out that you still are using those other skills that you say that you're no good at.
Yeah, no, that's right. So I feel like whatever your strengths are that drive you toward a career, and you think that you're going to be running from your weaknesses, eventually you're going to get far enough down in your career where you got to embrace those weaknesses as well. So I've definitely come full circle in all of that over the years.
Okay. Nice. So, what is your favorite thing about the work that you do?
Easily the people, and I think that's going to be my favorite thing about everything in life, right? Anything that I'm doing now, or really have ever done, my favorite thing is always the relationships. The people I work with now are just incredible. They surprise me every day with how thoughtful they are, how considerate they are, how kind they are. And, aside from all of those human qualities, on the performance aspects of things, just how hardworking they are and just how deeply smart and intuitive they are in the stuff that we need to get done on any given day. That's my favorite part. Just sitting there, being impressed by people every single day. There's no shortage of that in this job.
I can definitely relate to that. One thing I definitely love about working with Trey is definitely the people that I work with. I'm very fortunate to have a team with some super amazing people. Definitely makes all the difference. So on that same note, then, what's your least favorite part of your job?
Easily time entry. So this isn't a feature of every legal job, right? Some lawyers, they work at companies where you don't have to keep up with your time. But right now, if you work at a private firm, there's discussions of moving away from this model. But right now, if you work at a private firm, you've got to keep up with every single thing that you've done on every single day, right? And you got to keep up with how much time you spent on each individual thing. And you got to put that in a program that keeps up with your time, right? And so you've got to put that in every day. It's no fun. I don't think it'll ever be fun. I think if you ask any lawyer who's still in private practice, they'll tell you timekeeping is one of the more unpleasant features of the job.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't know that. I didn't think about you have to keep track of all the different things that you're doing so that you could. Yeah, that's a lot. So I can understand why that's your least favorite thing.
Yeah, and you have to listen. You have to find out convincing ways to describe what you're up to, right? You can't just say email Bob, right? You have to say email Bob concerning analysis relating to leasehold obligations under what, you know what I mean? It's a whole thing.
So do you okay. Do you also get to put in the time that it takes that you are keeping track of all the stuff you're doing? Is that also something that you can feel like I spent 3 hours keeping track of all the stuff that I was doing as well?
Yeah. So you don't. Well, I think maybe what you're getting at is, do you get credit for having to write all that stuff down and the time that it takes, right? Unfortunately, the answer is no. You don't get credit for that. So the smart lawyers and the organized lawyers and the proactive lawyers, they figure out the most efficient way for them to keep track of what they're doing. There's all these tools, there's electronic timers and all of that. Some people are good with those. Some people have different methods, but everybody eventually figures out what their preferred method of keeping up with their time is. And for the most part, you'll find that each lawyer has figured out, what works for them and what takes up the least amount of their day on any given day.
I didn't realize that like that was like a standard thing for all lawyers, like keeping track of the time like that. So that's something that I just learned. What's common?
Go ahead.
No, I just had another question. What were you saying?
I was gonna say, if you ever want to like bond with a lawyer, just ask them, how annoying is it for them, or what a unpleasant experience it is to have to account for every single 6-minute increment of their day for their entire career.
I will do that. So what is the common misconception people have about the work that you do? I guess about being a lawyer.
I don't know if it's a common misconception, but it's certainly a perception that I held whenever I had never really met a lawyer and had never worked with a lawyer, never been in a law office or all that. I thought it was a really, really serious group of people. Like, I just mean the disposition of lawyers generally was, if you watch a movie, right, the lawyer's always like got the best lines and, they're always in a very well put together suit and they're always deploying some master strategy, and they're very serious. They're, delivering these heartfelt lines and all. Anyway, that's not at all what it's like. I mean, there are moments like that where you get to deliver the final monologue, right? And it's some convincing thing on some issue that you believe in. But for the most part, it is working in teams of people on, at least on the transactional side, but I think this is true on the litigation side as well. You're working with teams of people, you're being faced with somewhat complex problems, and you've got to work as a team to figure out how to solve those problems. And a lot of it is just the blocking and tackling of everyday life, right? You're just getting together in teams and saying, who's going to deal with this part? Who's going to deal with that part? How are we going to do it? When do we need to get it done by? What are the deadlines? Whose expectations do we have to meet? Those kinds of things that I think are probably common through a lot of jobs, but you don't necessarily, unless you've spent time with lawyers, you don't necessarily think of that being what they spend their days doing.
Yeah, that's true. I'm learning something here too. Well, John, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Hopefully, just 5 years down the road on what I'm doing now, right? Sorry, give me 1 second. Sorry, this is one of the joys of working from home is that if my dog feels like she's being left out of some fun, she lets everybody know.
Well, she seems happy now.
Yes. All right. So where do I see myself in 5 years? Look, this is a very interesting phase of life. Once you get out of the place where there's external numbers being assigned to the level you're at, things take on much less of a clear direction. Okay, so all through the school years, right? You're in first grade. Well, you've made some progress between first grade and second grade because now you're in second grade, right? You're not in first grade anymore. That's forward. numbers go forward. You get the joy of that all the way through, 12th grade, and then you're on to college. You're a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and then if you go to law school or med school, in law school, you're a 1L, a 2L, 3L, and then you graduate. And luckily, the industry of the law knows that lawyers need to feel this tangible progress. So they continue with the labeling, right? They tell you, you're a first year, you're a second year, you're a third year, until you make partner, at which point nobody is telling you whether or not you're making progress. It is up to you to continue to define what progress means to you, and then pursue that path, right? And it's a path, it's a process that is going to be met with a lot of unexpected things, right? So no one expected that we would have a pandemic this year, and it would throw, for instance, the hotel industry into disarray temporarily, right? So the question of where do I see myself in 5 years is extraordinarily complicated. I think that the honest answer is just, I see myself continuing to do my best, to continue to try at that point to define what progress is going to be, sort of define what progress is going to mean for me at that time, and to try to pursue a path that takes me toward those progressive goals as they kind of define themselves based on the situation. I feel like that's a terrible answer. I'm sorry.
No, it's not. I love that. I kind of have like the same kind of answer whenever someone asks me, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Because I don't have like this one point of where I'm trying to be. It's just a matter of continuing to, gain skills, continuing to learn, and just being better in 5 years than I am today. So leaving it open for, because you don't know. So yeah. All right. Nice. A few more questions for you, sir. If you could give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
All right. So I think maybe the the challenges that kids today face are a little bit different. So I feel like I should tailor this answer a little more specifically to the types of things that the kids today are going to be navigating. But the answer is more or less the same. I've just got to include some details. And the piece of advice would be, whenever you're feeling overwhelmed, whenever there's just a lot of noise in the air, it is okay to just stop, center yourself, zoom out, all right, all the way out, and say, where am I going? Am I sure of that? Where am I going at a macro level? What am I trying to accomplish here? And then zoom all the way back in to what you're doing. At that very moment, ask your question, how does this fit in? And then just do it, right? And so that helps you kind of maintain a direction in life and figure out and sort of like cut the noise. Because if you look at the list of all of the things that you're going to need to get done in any given day, whatever that day is, even some of the easier days, it can feel overwhelming. And especially as you're navigating the transition from high school to college. I mean, just the administrative challenges alone are crazy. I remember navigating those myself and thinking, on every day I was overwhelmed, right? How can I possibly get the studying done? How can I possibly run when I don't even know what doctor I need to go to get a physical, or what administrator I need to meet with to figure out what classes I need to take? I don't even know where my dorm room is. How far is my dorm room from the field house? How long does it take me to get there in the mornings? Do I run there? Do I drive there? Like, all of these things, any given day can feel overwhelming. So you've got to have a method that works for you, where you can just cut the noise out and figure out, all right, how do I make my next move? And so one of the ways I think that really helps you do that is to create good relationships with reliable mentors. And whenever you're in college, let me just tell you, you are surrounded by potential mentors. Everybody who is in that profession, who packs those buildings, whether they're teachers, administrators, coaches, they have chosen a life that is dedicated to helping people achieve their goals. They want to help you. And so if you want to utilize that help, you've got to humanize yourself to them and put some skin in the game and make them want to invest in you, right? That will always be the best way for you to figure out what direction am I going to go, right? I've got all these people around me that are invested in me. I'm going to go consult with one of them because right now I'm too frazzled. I don't have all the answers. I can't think clearly. Where are my mentors? They really pay off whenever you've developed those relationships.
You know, mentors is something that has come up in a few of our job shadows, and like just the importance of making sure that you have mentors around you who can support you. And it's something that we at Trey that we definitely instill in our athletes, and it's a part of our programming because it's so important. So I'm so happy that you brought that up because regardless of what field you go into, what you do in life, you're going to need people around you who you can go to for advice if you need help with something, or who will be there to support you. Like, you need mentors regardless. So I'm so happy that you brought that up. I guess as we're thinking about like mentors, like that's important for you to have in your circle wherever you go. In your specific line of work, like as a lawyer, what would you say are the skills that are most important?
The skills that are most important?
Mm-hmm. What skills?
It changes. It changes. You know, I would say at first, you know, it's a matter of attention to detail. I give a lot of young lawyers this speech, right? It's you've got to understand once your work product gets out into the world, nobody's going to know the circumstances under which that work product was created. So you've got to have good work product every single time. So it doesn't matter if you're doing it at 9 o'clock in the morning on a Tuesday morning, whenever you're very well rested and there's not a lot of demands on you that are outside this particular project. Those are ideal conditions. You're always going to create great work product in that scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to have to create great work product in much more challenging conditions. So having that attention to detail that's completely unwavering, irrespective of the circumstance, is going to be how you make sure that you protect your reputation. And I think this goes beyond the law. It goes into everything that you're going to do. So if you're going to do it and it's going to have your name on it, it's going to have your brand on it, make sure that you do it in a way that represents what you stand for. And in the legal profession, that means attention to detail. That means if somebody else gets their hands on it, there's not going to be obvious things wrong with it. They're going to get it and they're going to say, you know what, this is pretty good. And they're not going to be able to tell whether you did it under completely ideal circumstances or under challenging circumstances, right?
Yeah. Nice. Thank you, Mr. Bain. Well, we are gonna actually wrap up this conversation. You gave some really great insight, and just not even just like to anyone who wants to be a lawyer, but just for anyone in the professional fields moving forward, just the importance of having mentors around you, the importance of being really keen and clear of your work, of paying attention to detail. Like, these are things that, whether you want to be a lawyer or even in my work that I do, these are things that I'm using every day. So definitely want to thank you for your insight and for sharing a little bit about your background and what you do as a lawyer, in particular in real estate, and how you're managing right now. I guess a final question for you then, as we are like in this global pandemic, you mentioned that you're currently working from home. What are some other ways that your line of work has been affected? You did mention that a little bit, how like people aren't really trying to buy hotels as much. How else has your work been affected right now? And then is it changing at all how things are going to be for you moving forward?
Yeah, so that's really complicated. So I would say you probably don't need to know how people sign documents and that sort of thing, but that's been complicated, right? Um, so to do a transaction, for instance, you've got to get people with a pen to sign a piece of paper, and that piece of paper has to go somewhere. Sometimes you have to have witnesses that witness the people signing the document, right? Well, whenever we were hit with these restrictions, travel restrictions, the services that perform those witnessing duties and that sort of thing, they were not permitted to go into people's houses. You know, people were not comfortable having people in their houses and potentially being exposed to COVID and all that. So, you know, look, something as silly as that became like a big deal in the industry that people had to figure out. But yeah, I think so. You say, you know, working from home. There's a little bit more to that if you're used to working in teams than just the fact that you happen to be working from home. You've got to figure out how to generate good chemistry with the people that you're working with without being in the same room. You know, for instance, like on this call that we've had right here, it's not just exactly the same thing as if we were sitting in the same room and having the same conversation. We could flow a little easier. We wouldn't feel like we were interrupting each other. There wouldn't be like breakups with technology and all that. Sure. And so, so all of the same challenges that, you know, we've had with just this very simple call that we're navigating here on very simple subjects, we've got to navigate daily on more complicated, high stakes issues where communication is key, chemistry is key, keeping people's spirits up so that, you know, they're up for the next challenge as far as, you know, just their stamina goes. You know, those have all been challenges. I can say that the folks that I work with have done an incredible job supporting each other, supporting me, and just being flexible in all of this and making sure the fact that we've all moved into uncharted territory. Mm-hmm. They all recognize that. And so everyone is sort of leaned in to make sure everybody on the team is not being left to fall down, right? It's been really impressive to see just how much people have stepped up and how much they care for each other and all of that. So those are the things that I think it was really unpredictable about how teams were going to respond, right? Can we make it work being all in our own individual houses whenever we're used to getting in a conference room and communicating and having the camaraderie and all that? Can we make it work? Well, we've made it work, and that's been a really pleasant surprise through all of this.
Thanks. Thank you for sharing that. Well, I want to thank you again for sharing your time with us and your background and your expertise and the work that you do. We hope that you're willing to join us and do some additional work with us in the future. You know, we always love to recruit volunteers to help out with Trey. So thank you definitely, John, for being with us tonight. To our participants who are here, thank you for joining us tonight. We appreciate you. And so everyone, in case you were not here earlier, this was brought to you by Trey Athletes, a Dallas-based nonprofit who works with athletes. And with that, we're going to sign off. Good night. It's athletes everywhere. Bye.
LaJoy, thank you.
Thank you.